Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7 o'clock, so we'll start this evening's meeting. Thank you. All right, I've not found my guff sheet. In accordance with openness of Local Bodies Regulation 2014, this meeting is being live streamed, may otherwise be recorded, filmed or communicated on other media platforms. Recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. Both councillors and officers in attendance are reminded to make full use and speak clearly into the microphones available at all times. A reminder that mobile phones should be turned off or put on silent mode. Those present at the meeting should refrain from taking telephone calls. Thank you. Remind those public in attendance must not disrupt the meeting. There's no public here, so that answers that one. What is happening there, please?
An apology was received from Councillor Darling.
Okay. Reports of substitutes?
No.
Declarations of interest? No. It's the previous meeting. Do we shall sign those? The true and accurate record? Yeah. From this one previous meeting, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The action list is in relation to the sports facilities update. As members will be aware, at the meeting on the 21st of November last year, the content of the report was noted and the 3G football facility at Blaby Road Park was removed from the list of proposed Section 106 commitments, and it was agreed to the public consultation in relation to the provision or potential provision of such a facility prepared and signed off prior to commencement by the award members for South Wigston. Members are now cognizant of the fact that there is actually no budget available for the development of such a 3G pitch in South Wigston. So the consultation has been placed on hold while officers conduct a viability assessment to ascertain whether or not there will be available funding to allow a publicly accessible 3G pitch in South Wigston.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gill. That answers that one. Any petitions or deputations, please? None? Okay. Item number 7, corporate performance update, pages 8 to 38. Mrs. Fisher, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. If I can now report on Q3 corporate performance. As members are aware, these are linked to our Council's corporate objectives: building, protecting and empowering communities, growing the borough economically and providing excellent services. We have 96 key performance indicators for our corporate plan, and these are the scoring system for these are applied using the following definitions: green, where the target is fully achieved or is currently on track to achieve target; amber indicator is in danger of falling behind target; and red indicator is off target and has been completed behind the deadline target. In Q3, out of the 96 indicators, 83 were due for reporting at the end of this quarter. 65 of those were green status, 15 were amber status, and 3 were red status. This equates to 78% green, 18% amber, and 4% red status for the third quarter. In comparison to second quarter 2021, where it was 80% for green, 19% for amber, and 1% for red. If I can now refer members to reference members to the performance chart, but the first chart one, which is corporate and by objective. So if we look at the green and amber and red targets, overall performance, green 65%, percentage 78%. As I've said, amber 15 with a percentage of 18, and red indicators 3 with a percentage of 4. If we break those down to the corporate objectives, building, protecting and empowering communities, number of indicators green were 26, the percentage is 84. Amber 5, percentage 6, and we've had no red indicators there. Growing the borough economically, 15 green indicators, 83%, 3 amber indicators, 20%, and again, no red indicators. If I can then reference members to the providing excellent services, 24 were green with 71% achieved, 7 indicators amber with 20% achieved, and red 3 indicators with 9% achieved. If we move then by performance to chart 2, which is within service areas, I'll move to built environment. 24 green indicators, 75%, 6 amber indicators, 19%, and 1 red indicator, 6%. And then customer service and transformation, 10 green indicators, 83%, 2 indicators amber with a 17%, and no red indicators. Finance and resources, 6 green indicators, 55%, 4 amber at 36%, and 1 red indicator at 9%. Law and democracy, 25 green indicators, 86%, 3 amber indicators at 10%, and 1 indicator at 4%. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Broadley. Oh, okay. Anybody else want to speak on this one? Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question regarding, sorry, Mrs. Fisher, you mentioned last quarter we were 19% amber, 1% red. It's actually gone up. Is there a reason for that?
It's just based on the RAG tracking system. So if you when we move through the report, you'll see which ones have actually moved up and which ones have moved down based on last quarter.
And our finance and resources, we've got our 151 office there now, and it's still showing quite a bit in red. Is there a particular reason for that one now?
That will be explained later.
I think
That will be explained later. Okay. Mr. Lloydell.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just go back to the report summary? Just for my benefit, if you want, it's talk about colours, the red, amber, green, and the blue there. Then it goes down to talk about a white ranking system that's outside the control.
Yes.
Not finally white.
Mr. Gill, Mr. Fisher.
Councillor Lloydell, all I report on is the green, amber and red. If members would like to see white and blue, we're happy to do that. But from a point of view of reporting, we report on the red, amber, green, not the blue and white.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. When you say that there's white, but they're outside out, you're looking for what's outside of it. That's all I'm saying. It's probably me looking for something that's not there. That's
So sorry, for clarity then, for example, it would be something around if there'd been a COVID pandemic and it'd been something completely out of our control that we couldn't actually deliver on. So apologies.
Okay. We'll move on to Housing Capital Programme Built Environment Update. That's Mr. Eyre, please. Online.
Good evening, members. We are slowly coming to end of our improvement programme with regards to kitchen and bathroom improvements. Throughout the housing stock, the information that we've now collated and got together does tell us that most properties, if not all properties, have got a kitchen, a reasonably modern kitchen, which is 20-year-olds or less, and a bathroom that is 30-year-old or less. So this, in terms of the programme on the kitchen and bathroom side, we have started to scale that down. That gives us a period of approximately 2 or 3 years where we are going to start concentrating on other aspects of stock management. So that will be looking after the communal, updating elements of the communal areas that need updating. So, for example, lifts, door entry systems, and there is quite a large roof replacement programme required at Bennett Way. We're also looking at carrying out quite an extensive health and safety programme. This is what we are looking to do is catch up on a lot of things that are coming out as a result of the Grenfell inquiry. Lots of guidance and changes in regulation are coming about. In particular, things like installing CO2 detectors in properties, making that mandatory, and looking at updating our electrics or inspecting our electrics, should I say, on a 5-yearly basis. At the moment, there is no requirement for us as a social landlord to carry out electrical inspections whilst tenants remain in the property, although there is a requirement of private sector landlords to carry out 5-yearly inspections. And we are of the opinion that it's good practice to sort of lead by example, if you like, with the private sector by saying that, you know, we will carry out 5-yearly inspections of properties. In terms of housing options and homelessness, we have seen an increase in households that are being accepted and accommodated in temporary accommodation. In the paper, you will see that we've put a table. Whilst we are seeing quite a steady average of 2 to 3 applications per week being made, where we are struggling, while the number of people in temporary accommodation going up, where we are struggling is in being able to discharge our duty by accommodating people into either our properties or housing association properties. Considering that, going forward, we are looking at ways to address that, and that will be one of the main things will be a closer working relationship with the private sector landlords. And we're hopeful that for April, May time, there will be quite a substantial private sector offer that's tabled and presented for us to work from going forward. In terms of light bulb, the light bulb, we're pretty much meeting the demand for disabled adaptations. There is a slight problem that we've encountered in a change of contractor. So that just means that in some of our DFGs we've exceeded our target of 20 weeks, and also part of that is as a result of a change in client needs, which means that the person needs a reassessment. But generally, performance is relatively good, and I think in Appendix 2 you'll see there's a list of performance indicators there. And finally, the capital programme. There's one area to note where there's potentially an overspend, and that's in the door and replacement programme. Whilst it looks like there could be an overspend, what I will say is, whilst the orders have gone in to the contractor, it's likely that the contractor won't be able to start the work until April. So therefore, we will have to come out of next year's budget for the door replacement programme. And what we intend to do is put forward a list of projects that we're going to use as the capital programme for the next year, and look to appropriately cover this potential overspending next year's budget. Happy to take any questions.
Mr. Carter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Two comments, or two and a half comments on section 3.1. The top of page 12, I welcome the fact that the government has set a target that by 2030, all social homes must have a minimum of EPC-C. I say that in my capacity as chair of the Environment Working Group, and therefore I welcome the fact that Mr. Eyre and his team are already on the case and will be bringing forward a plan setting out the actions they're going to take to bring our properties up to the required standard. So that's the good news part. The other is a question of clarification. When I look at the appendix of the HRA capital programme, I'm slightly confused because there seems to be a mismatch between the numbers and the text. So when I read central heating and boiler replacements, if I read the text, I get the impression that we haven't implemented the full programme, and that emergency and urgent boiler replacements are the only things that are taking place, and that the boiler replacement programme has been suspended. However, I then read the numbers, and the numbers suggest we've used all of the money. And then I turn to fire safety works, and again I read the text, and it suggests to me that £40,000 has been spent and £90,000 has been set aside. Now my maths tells me that 40 plus 90 is 130,000, and yet total projected expenditure is 150,000. So perhaps Mr. Eyre could clarify my misunderstanding.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the boiler replacement programme, again, pretty much like the kitchens and bathrooms, we are now, there's one or two exceptions, I'll come back to that in a moment, but all our boilers are within 12 years old. There are one or two exceptions where people have refused to have a boiler installed and they want to keep hold of their old boiler. And some people have actually had their own boiler installed. So, you know, but the boilers that we install are fall within that notional life period expectancy. But each year there are a number of boilers that will fall out of that period of 12 years, of being 12 years or old. What we've got, we start off the year with, for example, 50 boilers that we're going to replace, and we replace those, and then whatever expenditure we've got, we hold that just for any emergencies or repairs that come in. So boilers that will be identified as beyond economical repair. So it's kind of one of those where you hit the programme hard at the beginning of the year, and that falls in with the summertime anyway, and then you tail it off as you've hit your quota of boilers that are coming out of compliancy. Does that answer the question in respect to the boiler?
I'm not sure. No, I don't. I'm not sure it answers my question about the mismatch between the numbers and the text, unless what you're saying to me is you will spend the 111,000 by the end of the year. But at the end of quarter three, you had only focused on emergency and urgent boiler replacements.
No, my apologies. My apologies. I think in quarter 1 and 2, we had a a programme that was replacing boilers that were coming up to the anniversary of being 12 years old. So we completed those. And then there was a period of, there's this kind of period going on from sort of November to December where there were no replacements required other than emergency or urgent boiler replacements. We will spend, the money. Sometimes it's difficult to explain because sometimes we put in large orders and that makes it look like the budget's spent, but sometimes, as I've said, people will refuse boilers or boilers won't be or works won't be done, and that committed amount will come down. In terms of and that's a similar issue in terms of the fire safety works. We've placed orders for fire safety works to be completed, which are a committed sum of £40,000. Now, when the invoice comes in for that may be less or it may be more, but we've actually committed a sum of £40,000 for works that have started or due to start imminently. In terms of £90,000 being set aside this is for the purpose of the works that have been identified in the fire risk assessments. So what we've kind of calculated is the works that have been identified will cost us about £90,000, and that will come out of the budget. Whatever if we start the work this financial year, there'll be the sum of that financial out of this budget. Otherwise, we will carry some of the works over into the next financial year. That £90,000 is a sum for the works, fire safety works, fire risk assessment works.
Right, we'll move on to Clay.
Thank you, Chair. 3.4, the last paragraph of it, it says about delays, might be delays with restrictions and building materials, is normally 12 months, but case by case, light bulb, not the council, light bulb can extend the time accordingly. This is to be reviewed on a continuing basis. Is the council informed of any delays on any of these and the reasons why? If not, then I think that the council plus members need to be informed of any delays that might be taking place and the reasons why.
Chair?
Yeah. Chair, yes. Any delays, any issues in relation to the light bulb scheme. I attend monthly meetings with the other authorities that are involved in the scheme, and we talk through that. There's the kind of strategic meetings that we have, but then we have the operational meetings, and we will talk through any issues that affect all of us, and obviously any issues that are just our issues that need to be resolved. So yeah, we are kept informed and updated of this.
Could that be included in your report each time so that members are aware of any particular delays and things? Because I think it would be useful for us to, we get inquiries about people about delays and things, and I think it doesn't have to be their personal details because obviously we don't need to know that. But if somebody should contact us because an extension can't be done, we can sort of try and put two together and say, the reason is materials or whatever. So it would be useful if we could just have some sort of idea. Thank you.
Chair, I'll just say, yeah, of course we can include that. What I will say is, if members do get a query in relation to that and they want to refer to me, contact me directly, I can always chase that up on your behalf and find out what's going off. That's not an issue.
Thank you. Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. A question regarding homelessness. There is a significant increase in number of people becoming homeless. And I think there was a reason indicated that the statutory moratorium coming to an end for evictions. Is that the reason? And if that is the case, you mentioned that we're working with the private landlords. How are we going to do that if they are the ones evicting people? Is there a plan? And also I'd like to know that do we have a timescale in which we aim to discharge the responsibility?
Yeah, I'll try and go in reverse. Yes, there is a timescales in terms of different stages to do with homelessness. So we have to make this. If someone presents to the council as homeless, we have to make a decision within a set period of time. And forgive me, I've forgotten what that time is. It will come back to me in a moment. It's about 70 days, something like that. However, once we've accepted a duty as a homeless duty, then there is no real sort of timescale at how long we hold that person as technically homeless or manage that person. It's not, we can't discharge our duty until we've provided them with settled accommodation. And this is the difficulty. This is why the figures have gone up slightly to 33 in temporary accommodation, is because we're just struggling to find units of accommodation that we can class as or we can identify as settled accommodation. In terms of the private sector, there's kind of different strands to the private sector. Yes, I think some of the if you see in the table below, which it says how many homeless applications per week we were receiving, you'll see around about September, October, there was an unusually higher number of applications coming in. And I think that could be attributed to that end of that, rent eviction sort of moratorium. So, but it started to level off. We feel it started to level off. So it met its peak in October. In terms of how we deal with landlords, the private sector, or working with the private sector going forward, there's always going to be landlords that, there's the professional landlords that are just, purely financially driven. And I think they're not necessarily the landlords that I've got in mind that I want to work with. Not saying we won't work with them, but I think they're kind of they've got their market. They know what they're doing, and there is a reluctance to kind of for them to be associated with the council and homeless people. But there are quite a few landlords and people come to us, what we call unplanned landlords, or people who've got a second home that want to particularly work with the council, will work with the council. And I think that's where our focus is going to move towards, and we will come up with a strategy on how, what our proposal, how we will work with them to help us look at finding permanent accommodation for people. And a colleague of mine's just emailed me actually to say it's 56 days that we have to make a decision on someone's homelessness.
Ms. Lloydell.
Page 29, the appendix. Starts off with a budget of 9,800. But you've committed 39,300, which is an overspend of 29,532. The project for the year is going to be 9,800. And that's quite right, it's an overspend. I understand the explanation underneath that suggests that you're going to take that from the HI Capital Programme. But is that 29 is a carry forward to next year? Or will you complete those 40 doors between now and the end of this month? Supplementary.
Mr. Eyre?
My apologies, Chair. I only caught bits of that that question. I don't know if it.
Please.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Is it me? Not
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll repeat it, so Mr. Ayres. On the doors and windows, 9,800 is your budget, 39,000 committed, which leaves 29,500 overspent. But the total project expenditure for the year is 9,800. I understand the explanation underneath. Is that 29,000 a carry forward to next year? I think the next financial year, or is it going to be that those 40 doors will be replaced by the end of this month?
No, it won't be a carry forward. If there is a shortfall, we've placed the order, but the contract has not started working, not even started fitting them yet. So what will happen is, if we've got no budget, we will carry forward the commitment to next year's budget, and we will sufficiently account for that in next year's budget. But because of the issues of the security and safety, we just felt we couldn't really delay placing the order any longer. So I would imagine, I can't imagine the guys being on site and fixing the doors in March, but the doors and the frames are being made up with the order that we've made. So this will be a commitment coming out of next year's budget.
Okay, and you've got a supplementary?
Yeah, I think I understand that. So it's in a carry forward, then that's what I get at. The process of doing it when you've identified, sorry for the inconvenience, identified 40 doors. I identified that they needed replaced because, and there were significant faults which compromised the building safety. But you would have known that at the very beginning. That's why they needed replacing. So therefore, you get budgeted for that. Because each door it represents a cost times the number. You've only got 9,800. Does that make sense? Is the process right when you have to go out and look at the doors and say that needs replacing because of the security and safety issue? Therefore, the cost of that door is going to be more. So therefore, it's more than 9,800. So where did the 9,800 come in the first place? Does that make sense?
Again, it was a bit difficult to catch all of that, but I think I've caught what you're saying. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I would just say that the doors that that I refer to in the narrative, the team that's in place now wasn't aware of them until around about September, October. So it was a very, oh, we need to do something because of the security and safety aspect. And this put us in that difficult position. So that's why we just committed to that sum and the doors. I think as members may know, that the whole the majority of the housing team is relatively new to Oadby and Wigston, and I think this year we are picking up, but as there was no formal handover from the previous management team, we are picking up on things as we go along. But we think, we're fairly confident now that we've covered everything off, not only doors and window replacement, but other aspects as well.
Well then, come on back.
Thank you for all the work you've done. I appreciate new team, new start, catching up. I think you're probably doing that. It shows it here with the performance that's going to be putting forward. So again, thank you very much for your answers. Thank you.
Mr. Boyce, online.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for inviting me to your committee. Can we just pick up quickly on Councillor Hack's comment on homelessness? The District Council network have been looking at the cost of living rises and will be making representation to government on this, because it's pretty obvious that not only will people have to choose between heating and eating, but some people will actually fail, and I suspect that evictions may rise in the coming few months. Therefore, the pressure on homelessness will fall on districts, and clearly we have a set budget for it. It may well be exceeded, and the time to speak to government is now, not when we're in a crisis. So that work is being carried out by the District Councils Network. Thank you.
Also bear in mind that homelessness falls on the general fund, not housing revenue account. So that will make the position even worse for budgeting for coming years. Thank you. The next one is Borough Ash Street update. Well, that's written down there for you to have a read of. Mr. Cartmart had comment on that one.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Chair. This is, I think, a very helpful report that focuses on the state of our ash trees and the work that needs to take place. However, I'm also aware that there are other tree species within the borough that are suffering from various diseases. So, for example, just around the corner from me on Chicken Alley, out of 27 trees down the right-hand side, 9 of them have had to be pollarded because of a disease which Mr. Benito, our arboricultural officer, has explained to me. But actually, the worrying thing about that is that that particular disease is not species specific, even though at the moment is affecting lime trees. So my question, I think, is, or request, is perhaps at the next meeting to have a more comprehensive report about the impact of pests and diseases on our tree stock. Because at a time when we're trying to increase our tree stock, we don't really want to be losing them out the other end as well. And I think there's also an issue, as Mr. Benito has indicated in his report, about how what trees you use to replace where trees have to be taken out. So just really a request for a more extensive report at the next meeting.
I will come to the next meeting. All tree species that are affected by various diseases. Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one regarding ash trees. I'm no horticulturalist. No trees grow and they are green leaves and they fall off in the winter most of the time. But with regard to ash dieback, we only look at the trees that the council are responsible for. The county council only look at the trees that they're responsible for. But there are an awful lot of ash trees within private residences. Is there a specific tie between ash dieback and different ash trees, i.e. it's passed on from tree to tree? And just looking after our own trees doesn't take into account all the private trees. So is there any advice going out to private owners about what they can do with their ash trees, if anything, in order to improve the situation?
Come on, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Councillor Bolter. Appreciate it. I'm not aware of any advice that's going out to Councillor Bentley, but what I can do is raise the matter with Mr. Benito in respect of what he's doing. I am aware that he works closely with counties, so there is a connection between our trees and county trees, and there are also provisions within the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act which allow the council to take action in respect of dangerous trees. But whether we are proactive in providing advice to tree owners about what they should be doing to protect their trees, I'll have to check that with Mr. Benito.
Just come back to the chair.
Yeah.
I just think that there's some form of advice should at least be on our website for private owners to be able to refer to, so that one can identify if trees have the diseases, and two, what they can actually do about it.
That's true, but the householders are responsible for the trees on their property and they should take relevant.
We should be advising our residents.
We can do what we can about that. Any other questions at all? Climate change update. I've not met Mr. Harrison yet. Be nice if he could come to a meeting to actually tell us what he's doing about climate change. In fact, can go on an action list, please. And also, we employ this officer, and now I understand he's employing consultants. And also at Melton. Is there some joint work going off there between us and Melton, so we don't pay twice for the same sort of work?
The reality is, yes, he's actually a shared officer with Melton Borough Council. So any work that he is doing in respect of this baseline assessment will be done across both authorities, so that there's not a duplication of effort.
So we're not paying twice for the same job?
No.
Okay, that's all I'm concerned about. Any other questions on that about climate change? No? Right. We move now to exception reporting, built environment, and we've got a new Adrian Thorpe this evening. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm sort of substituting for Adrian this evening. Now, I don't know how you want me to do this, Chair, whether you want me to sort of go through each of the ambers
I'm going to say that page 15 is built, exception reporting built environment, and over on page 16 as well. Have any members got any questions on page 15 or 16? 15 first. Mr. Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. Could Mr. Carr just explain to members what action is being taken with regard to the red status for the planning applications on page 16? Just for information so that we all know what's happening to alleviate this situation, because it's quite ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Yes, I can do on that. And in terms of that, I suppose a bit of background, through the third quarter, and actually the development control team, we've been dealing with quite a sort of a large backlog of applications, which has obviously impacted performance. To improve the performance and to actually decrease the planning application backlog, what we've done is increased, or very recently increased staffing in the team, and we've also had a sort of a change to the management structure, hence me in my new role, looking after sort of planning overall. And in terms of the increase in staffing, that's obviously going to allow more applications to be dealt with in a timely manner, and thus bringing the backlog down. And in terms of the change to the management structure, what it will allow is me to actually focus on driving performance forward. And then once we get to that point, actually keeping it at a high level. So we've sort of seen that there's a problem, and those are the sort of that's what we've put in place to negate those problems going forward.
Yeah. Can I ask on page 15, the last item on page 15, it's got 100% within 91 days. Is that ever achievable? Or if we're looking at the target we can't possibly meet? And what's the government stat for that?
What I would say to that, Chair, is it's difficult. I wouldn't have thought that many authorities within England would be meeting sort of 100%, but obviously we'll always be striving for that. In terms of sort of government. I don't know sort of averages in terms of the local authorities, but I do know that in terms of when the government getting sort of involved with authorities when they're below a certain threshold, it tends to be around the sort of 60% mark, 70% mark.
It seems, we design ourselves to fail if we got 100% and we're never going to achieve it. And what's the average other authorities achieving? Perhaps we could have a think about that and put an item on the next agenda about that. See what's achievable and what's not. Thank you. Any other questions on that report at all? No. We move then to page 16, finance update. Right. Does Tommy want to present this or is Tracy going to do it?
Will be Comey.
Yeah, okay. Who's going to kick off then?
Okay. Chair, I can give you a brief overview unless you want direct questions asked.
Oh, we do indeed. Yeah. Go on then, brief overview first.
Okay, fine. With the actual finance update, the first section, 4.1, just highlights some of the grants the revenues and benefits teams have been involved with in test and trace payments. It just gives a few statistics on that. The general gist with all the grants or help we're getting relating to COVID, most of them finish at the end of March. But if there's any questions on that area, I'm happy to answer those. And then going on to section 4.2, again, it talks about the business grants, and it also talks about the council's liable to collect council tax and non-domestic rates. And if we then go on to section 4.3, it gives an overview of what the collection rates have been for the council between October and December last year. I'll just highlight just one or two of them. The actual collection rate in December was 83.3% for council tax. The actual target was 85.2%, so it was slightly under what we should have achieved. And with the non-domestic rates, the actual collection rate in December was 72.22%, and the target was 82.29%, so we're under by about 10%. But further work has been done to improve that rate as the year's gone on. And then if I just highlight and go to section 4.4, it just gives some property statistics. So the number of households who are on direct debit is roughly about 75% of the households. And then it just highlights a few other statistics. And then we go on to section 4.5, which is Reception's Report Finance. And it just gives some of our key performance indicators. And most of them are amber. And the last one with regards the business rates or NNDR collection rate, as I highlighted before, the collection rate was 72.22%, which is just over 10% shortfall in what the targeted collection rate of 82.29%. And just some separate information to that. The collection rate is actually improving, and work is being done on that at the moment. For instance, we're targeting the larger debts with the business rates to improve the collection rate. So when the next report comes to committee, you'll see that the collection rates are improving. So that's just a quick summary of the finance section. Chair, I'm open to any questions if anyone's got any.
Could we have on the next meeting how other districts are doing with their collection rates? So are we same as them? Are we worse than them or better than them? Unless somebody can give me information
So far, Chair, I've got the Q2 statistics. I can certainly find out if the Q3 statistics are available. I can answer question.
Okay. And the other thing is, have we got an action plan? Are we going to bring these collection rates back up to the designed level?
Yeah, we are taking action. As I said before, we're actually targeting the larger debts with the business rates to collect those in and recover that. And with the council tax, we're encouraging more people to go on to direct debit. So the money's taken regularly, and also the revenues and benefits team have been proactive in their actually when they're speaking to people on the phone, being proactive in ringing to try and increase the collection rates for the council tax. And also the other thing what we're doing is with the actual business rates, the records have just recently been updated because of some not discrepancies. Some records needed updating so that they're on the right business rates banding. Those have been updated, so the team's actively trying its best to collect the business rates and also the council tax.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. You have asked the question that I was going to ask, and this is to do with the earlier questions I raised. Do we have a plan of action to bring us out of red? And are these targets to collect NNDRs achievable, or are we just setting up to fail? And I was going to ask for plan of action, but you've already done that. So thank you.
Okay. Chair, can I answer that question?
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously this meeting, we're seeing statistics up to December. If I give you an example of the February statistics for the NNDR, the collection rate is about 88.5%, which is still down because the target is 94%, 94.5% for February. So although the collection rate is going up and the gap between the collection rate and the shortfall is going down, we are doing our best to get to the target, but it's still going to be, there's still a gap at the moment which we're trying to address.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Broadley.
Given the government's cost of living rises that we're all expecting in the national insurance and energy, do we feel that certainly next year we're going to be able to achieve any of this? Or is it the situation going to get worse and a lot of these will be red rather than amber? How do you feel it's going to play out, really?
Chair, if I'm permitted to answer that question. Obviously, the COVID situation restricted businesses and actually trading. So as long as everything keeps on going okay, businesses can trade, so they're still generating profits. So the cost of living is going up. I totally agree with that. So there will be pressure. So there will be some businesses that will struggle. I agree on that. But then there's the larger ones will still maintain their profit levels. It might drop a bit, but they still will maintain the profit levels, as I mentioned. And on the council tax, a good proportion of the households are on direct debit. So I imagine that's a constant. But you're right, it will put pressure on households. So some of it we've got to wait and see and monitor it so it goes along during the year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at all? The finance team? No? Okay, good. Ms. Fisher then, customer service and transformation, page 19.
Thank you, Sarah. If you'd like to just talk through those two amber indicators. So creating a branding strategy for the borough by the 31st of March 2022, that has been delayed because it ties into the communication strategy which is being worked on and is an integral part of that. So that work has been delayed. PS 30, improving responsiveness to complaints, enabling a quicker time to resolution. Members will be aware that a new process was in place in October 2020, which was much more effective from a point of view of triaging complaints through our customer service centre and our technical officers, and then moving them on to a much more robust process and response times for level 1 complaints and level 2. Unfortunately, in October, November and December, we have seen an increase in both stage 1 and stage 2. A meeting was scheduled with senior leadership and an action plan created. Positively, also in October, a new officer was appointed with the ability to specifically focus on complaints, members, GDPR, and that enables us the capacity to deliver and make that a much more robust process, as well as a much more robust process with the resource to actually support it.
Thank you. Any questions on that at all? Just like to say that on the refuse and recycling, Wixon's recycling rate was 44.7%, and our weight per resident was 347.4 kilos a year, compared with, I don't know, Harborough, 46.9% recycling, but 418 kilos per person weight. So we got to balance recycling plus the black bag weight. And if you look at Blaby, who do a similar system, their recycling rate was 44.1% and 426.5 kilos per person. So if you look at the charts, our recycling rates are average compared to all the other districts, but our weight per resident is also less. And that's the balancing act we have to meet. Northwest Leicester, who do a multiple collection rate of all different containers, their collection rate is 42.5% recycling, 414 kilos per resident. So even though they do a different recycling system to us, they're still well down the scale to what we actually achieve in Oby and Wixton with our weekly collection of refuse and recycling. So just put the point to you that, you know, fortnightly and all these extra containers doesn't always increase the recycling rate. Thank you. Just put that bit in just to stir the pot a bit. Mr. Gill, page 21.
Yeah. What I'm going to do, members, because this section is quite long, I'm going to deal with the separate teams, and if there's questions at that point, then we can deal with them. So 6.1 deals with corporate assets. There you have the information in relation to the introduction of the off-street parking order, the capital works and procurement work that was undertaken behind the scenes, the work that was undertaken to reline some of the car parks and some resurfacing the permit system and pay by phones. Then below that we have the Littibin grant. That has now been picked up by the Assistant Corporate Asset Manager, who's managing the grant allocated to the council. We did place orders, and some of you that attended licensing last week will be aware that those orders were delivered because they were stacked outside the council chamber.
I wondered what they were outside the change, and that's what they were, our new litter bins.
That's correct. In terms of capital works, we've obtained quotes and placed orders for structural repairs to the beer house at Oby Cemetery, repairs to the Florence Uplands Pavilion, and a new sewage pumping system at Blaby Road Pavilion. That report also gives further details on work that's been undertaken. We've also been involved in obtaining various reports required in relation to the disposal of this building, including fixed wire testing, updating the asbestos register, and obtaining energy performance reports. the consequence of all of that is that the knock-on effect is that the asset strategy review, which is a KPI, which was due for completion, has had to be delayed because of the demands in respect of the other parts of the work that we're doing. So at the end of that first section, subject to Chair's approval, I'll take questions on those matters.
Right, we'll start with the interesting ones about litter bin grant. Now, we've seen the bins outside. That's fine. We want them actually in location. So can we expedite that as quickly as possible? And also, can you explain to members about the new collection rounds, how it's going to be organised?
The position is that recently the Clean and Green team, which is grounds maintenance and the street cleansing, have been incorporated into the corporate assets team because of the synergies between. And at the moment, the assistant corporate assets manager is undertaking a review of the location of the bins, where the new bins are going to be placed, and more importantly, the collection routes to make sure that they are collected on a regular basis, so that we can identify heavy use bins that need emptying more than once, as opposed to bins that might be in a more remote location, shall we say, that perhaps only need emptying once a week or once a fortnight. So that is ongoing. We've also empowered, I think is the word, the collectors. If they do go down the road and they're on a route and they see a bin that is overflowing but is not on the collection list for that day, then actually it is okay to stop and go and sort it out. So, and they seem to have embraced that and, you know, are now more alert. One of the issues that we are having, when I say an issue, we receive constantly reports through Love My Street, which is an app where people go and collect, like the Little Wombles and other people, they collect rubbish, they leave it alongside our bins. If they tell us, we can try and make an effort to remove it, but sometimes we're getting 8, 9, 10 of these reports a day. And it is difficult to try and manage the normal routes with the additional. The corporate assets manager has started the development of a relationship with the Little Wombles and hope that going forward, if they're going out to do a collection on a Sunday, they tell us where they're going. So on a Monday morning, we can be there to make that collection quickly. So things are improving.
Okay. The other Sunday, they all met on the Legion car park, about 40 of them, went litter collecting. Unfortunately, they didn't tell the asset manager they're actually doing that. So Monday morning, there's all these bags lying around that nobody knew was going to happen. So words have been said to the Little Wombles. I had a meeting with them, with the asset manager, a couple of 3 weeks ago now, and I think the relationship's improving somewhat, and so much so that I believe some new bags and litter pickers are arriving shortly to assist them in their endeavours. So that should help somewhat. If you bear in mind that we've got, I think it's 5 people now working, collecting litter in the borough, council employees, which should never happen. We shouldn't have to employ that number of people to collect litter. You know, it's the public who drop it and they're paying the price. It's a lot of people, and people still complain about dropping litter. Well, you know, there's got to be a change of culture somewhere, or else we're going to get overwhelmed with litter. I know during the pandemic that takeaways popped up and people have now takeaway drinks and sandwiches, which didn't happen before. But, you know, let's be responsible and put them in the bins. So these new bins are somewhat bigger and will contain a lot more litter than what we've been able to do in the past. Mrs. Broadley, I think, is... oh.
Thank you, Chair. Just this past week, I've had 2 emails from residents asking when bins are going to be put back. There is one near the toilets on
Junction Road.
That's been missing for a year. And obviously it's quite near a jetty where people walk through. There's often rubbish there because I've seen it myself. And it would be ideal if members knew when these are going to start appearing, so that we can answer people on, you know, I was asked why they'd been disappeared a year ago and nothing had been put in its place. So it would be good if we just had some idea of when you're going to start putting these bins back in place, or if it's not going to be put back in there. Apparently it was a double bin that was there. So
it was a double bin. I think it got tipped by something, and a single one was put back.
No, the position is it wasn't a double bin. It was a single bin. But because of the volume of rubbish that was there, a Heath Robinson adaptation was made, and 2 single bins were joined together to make a double bin. Unfortunately, the side that was attached was damaged by a vehicle, and that was taken down because it was dangerous. And a decision was taken that we would wait until we had the new bins, because at that point we knew that we were making the bin infrastructure grant, which was awarded. But obviously that dreaded word, the pandemic, delayed everything. The bins are now with us. We do have a slight issue with some of them in that the inner linings of the bins were not delivered by the manufacturer. So we took the view that we wouldn't put them out because it would make it more difficult to clean and maintain them. I'm advised that those linings, and I think there were 4 of them, will be with us by the end of this week. We will then schedule a programme of works, because it's not just a matter of putting them there, it's making sure they're fixed, so that there's capital works and stuff to be done. And once that has been agreed, I'm happy for that to be shared with members. That's not an issue.
So hopefully it's ongoing work and it will be resolved as quickly as possible. And that's the result of this problem. Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question regarding the litter bins. I think I did ask this last time at the Green. Are we installing recycling bins as well as the litter bins, black bins? And
to be honest, Councillor Hack, I don't have that information, but I can certainly make sure. I know that the bins, and members will know from last week, they are very large, and I suspect that they've got various sections within them, but I can check that and come back to you after the meeting.
Please, because I did ask that question last time and I've been told we'll check and look into it, but nothing has happened.
Okay. Are you correct? Oh, Mr. Lloydell, and we'll move on.
Yeah, sorry, an opportunity. I take the opposite view. The less bins there is, the more encouragement you get people to take it home. And if somebody asks me for a new bin, I say no, I'm not going to go down that line. I want you to take the home and not use the bin. That's my own personal view. There's an opportunity here. Now we've got your new bins. I don't know whether there's capacity on the bins where, if you look at Keep Reading Tidy website, there's all sorts of stickers and things that you can have and buy, and it would be useful to start getting the message out on those bins if you can. Try to the borough, take all the throw, that sort of thing. And there's an opportunity now you've got the new bins, you could do that to encourage people to be aware. As you've got right saying, I don't put this down. Other people do. I look at my front garden and the wind's up and I'm taking Google's cartons out. But I just think it's an opportunity if we don't do something like that. I think that would send a bit of a message out to people. You know, pride of your borough, pride of your street. Let's do new bins. We've got that. On that says please keep this borough tidy.
You can look into that, can't you?
Very briefly. I mean, we are or have signed up to the Keep Britain Tidy, Great Clean later in the year, and on the back of that, that puts us in touch with a supplier that will provide us with a large quantity of free litter bags, which we are going to sort, and then we will obviously make them available to the litter one more than anybody else that requires it. What we are also considering, talking about bins and also talking about bus stops and things like that, is actually sponsorship, to see whether or not we can actually get businesses, people to sponsor the bins, sponsor the Bush Shelter sponsors the street cleaning. But you're quite right there, Councillor Boydell. The best message is for people to take home, because the reality is every time we put in a new bin, there's a cost, a revenue cost, because we've got 5 at the minute. Next year, we're going to need 6. The year after, we're going to need 7. So there is a balance to be drawn between what we do and trying to educate the public that, you know, they should be taking their rubbish home. I know that some premises write registration numbers on drinks cans and cartons that they sell. And if we find them, we will do the necessary inquiries so that we can try and issue a fixed penalty notice for somebody for dumping the rubbish. So, you know, we are endeavouring to do what we can.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on then. Mr. Gill, before you start that, you may as well answer the question now you're going to be asked.
I'm going to ask.
Air quality, Blaby Road, air quality monitoring station, how much longer have we got to wait?
The question, or the response, Councillor, is I don't know, but we are working on it. The position is the air quality monitoring station was purchased out of Section 106 monies that flowed from the development of Lidl and Wickes. There was an issue around the siting of, or where it was going to be sited. There was an issue around the electric supply and where that electric supply was going to come from. We are now in a position where we have electricity supply. We have the concrete slab on which the apparatus is going to stand. Unfortunately, when it was delivered, it then transpired the opening for the.
Excuse me, can I just, what's that smell? Because it's getting my.
It's the diesel from the, can we shut the outside door, please?
Is the heating on as well? Because it's starting to make me feel a bit really hot in here.
You'll find it's the diesel from the.
From there, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just coming in. Yeah, can you try and open the window over there? Sorry, yeah, it's unfortunate that it just comes through that. Yeah. Okay. So we have the slab. The cabinet that was supplied for it has got the hole on the wrong side for where the electrical input is. So that is in the process of being rebuilt, and we will be chasing it, and hopefully in the very near future that will be in situ, and that will give us some information about the air quality in South Wixton. And the section 6.2 also sets out what else we're doing in the borough. There is a section 106 which is being discussed, and that will also include a further air quality monitoring station, and we're continuing work with City Council on the A6.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you much, Chair. My question is, we've heard about the air monitoring station in South Wixton. We've heard about future plans about Section 106 money. My understanding was there was something also supposed to be coming through, which was in-time air monitoring linked to our Wi-Fi system, but nothing has been mentioned in either the paragraph or the table at the end. So I wonder if Mr. Gilpin.
That will appear in the next agenda, also with the chart of the test tubes that have been employed for a number of years, so you can compare what happened this year to last year and everything else. But unfortunately, it wasn't available in time for today's meeting, but that will happen in the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Fisher.
It certainly will, Chair.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Well, moving on, we've got electoral and democratic services. They've been engaged in the signature refresh and also in the postal vote update, so that people that have been on the register for a number of years have to provide a new signature so that we can check against it. We've also received initial notification from the Local Government Boundary Commission for a review of the ward boundaries in Oadby and Wixton. The intention is that that will commence after the full borough elections next year, and then it will be in place for the borough elections in 2026. Members will be formally briefed on the review process, and you'll have the opportunity of making comments and things directly to the the Boundary Commission. Any questions on that section of the report?
No, move on.
Thank you. Next section is community and wellbeing. Community and wellbeing, the community champions, they've continued to support the COVID-19 and increased COVID-19 patient have taken over in Wigston. They've held regular pop-ups, as it said there. We did have a pop-up vaccination centre at Tesco's in South Wigston. There is another pop-up taking place this weekend at the fire station on Bullhead Street. As you'll see from there, that they have been particularly active, and unless members have got, I don't intend to read all of it because it's quite dense. I mean, if members have got any comments on the community champions or the health and wellbeing programme, and I'm happy to take questions.
Right, Mr. Carter.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question relates to the section young people and youth provision and the second paragraph under that heading. I welcome the appointment of a youth engagement activator, and then it reads on to say that part of their role will be supporting existing provision in reopening and achieving sustainability. Does that relate purely to statutory provision, or does that recognise the extensive work that's done by voluntary sector organisations? So is that a resource that's there that will enhance our youth provision across the borough, and should that person be engaging with the voluntary sector?
Well, the bottom line is there's actually no statutory responsibility in terms of youth provision at this level. There is a statutory provision to an extent for county. So the purpose of this role is to engage across the borough with all sectors to try and improve the offer for young people. And you'll see one of the things we're looking at is the relaunch of the youth council through the schools. So the simple answer is yes, they will engage with anybody. And if you know of any groups that wish to engage with the officer, then let us have the details and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Boyce.
Thank you, Chair. Putting it simply, I think our health and wellbeing team have been absolutely super and doing a marvellous job. However, with the COVID vaccination, it's absolutely clear it doesn't matter how well and good you are at getting the message out, unless the provision of vaccination is easy to access, you are not going to succeed. And frankly, I think the CCG has let the borough down badly by not having sufficient permanent vaccination sites to allow people, and so that we can encourage people to actually use them. So putting it simply, I think we're being let down, not by our own people, not by our residents, but by the NHS for failing to make vaccination as easy and as freely available all of the time as it could do.
Thank you. I tend to agree with you. I noticed today at Tesco's, the county health team are there giving out testing kits to assist people in South Wixton. We've got a problem in South Wixton, people not going for vaccination. The more we can do to promote that, the better. Thank you, Mr. Gill. To move on. Hang on.
Sorry.
Just before we move on, do you think some of us could get a glass of water or something, because it's really got to my throat?
Yes, go on.
Just bear with me. I'll go to
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Well, get me when I sit there. That's why I've gone and shut the outside door. Yeah.
I thought it was the fans up there.
No, it should have
Yeah.
Just because of the windows, that's it. Okay.
Is that first one I had a break at the committee.
behind. No,
Yeah.
If it's of any interest, the going anyway, so. No,
Giving me a headache.
yeah, it depends on the wind direction or lack of wind, and it feeds in, but
Anybody else?
I'll give it up.
sorry,
It's been unhealthy.
sorry. Yeah.
The heating on in here.
Yeah, it's not. It's coming through that door.
No, the heating. I've just turned that off. Turned that off.
No, it's the smell and they'll have to warmer and warmer.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Well, got notified today that Sandhurst Street is going on the 2nd of May, they start demolishing it. So that will be freed up.
What about this one?
End of March it closes, literally, and then we're waiting for notification of what's happening. And this one is priority over Sandhurst Street,
Right, okay.
because we wanted to make sure we'd got vacant possession.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we divert them in 106 months?
Not only two there, councillor Bentley, was that a subtle hint?
I did give instructions to certain person earlier today that lost anybody? No, right. Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chair. So the next section is ASP, and it sets out in that section a number of incidents recorded and investigated. It also sets out the disposals and the fact that the council has taken appropriate action as far as possible, and that 2 community protection warning notices have been issued in relation to poor behaviour by neighbours. The graphs show the type of ASB and also the disposals. And happy to take any questions on ASB.
Mr. Lloyd.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. From a communication point of view, I can only talk about what we do. In a positive way, thank you, committee on it. During that stage, I think people need to be congratulated in what they've achieved so far. This unfortunately went out a couple of weeks ago, suggesting that we've got a problem with the ASB, retail crime, that sort of thing. I'm pleased to inform you that we haven't got a problem with ASB. What we have is a positive system in place that deals with it quite promptly. As we can see, I'm not going to read it out, it's in front of you. Positive things there is what's happening. Community protection order at the bottom of it, it's quite an effective tool in the box, as it were. I've been out with the police now on a few occasions recently. Around the ASB hotspot at the borough. Pleased to say that there's nothing happening at all that particular night. But quite a long time out there. Went to one, of course, not far from here.
You're in the month.
You're in the mic, sorry. not far from here, where the orders or the warning notices have been put in place. And as we were going down there, the perpetrators were just about to break those orders until they saw us. And then the young person who perpetrator of that, or repeated that order, I've never seen anybody run to court. Apart from me, who's somebody at the bar, which was turn. So I think that you can see it on the back. I don't like to think from a recording point of view, I think it's important that we capture all the evidence that we need to be able to put systems in place to deal with it. So I'm hoping you'll take on board the fact that from a recording point of view, that we're all doing the same thing, so that whatever becomes before us is an accurate record of what's happening out there. I'm sure it is, but we just need to perhaps tweak and be a little bit more proactive on what we do. That can be taken on board. I'd appreciate that fully. I think we need to congratulate the officers, and the young people for the good work they do. Obviously, when you see the outcome of what's happening now.
Mr. Gill.
That's our regard and our thanks for that. Keep our boys safe.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. We'll certainly pass those comments on, and we will ensure that officers record appropriately, and if necessary, give them a refresher on what they need to be doing.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, at the last ODB forum, it was reported that at Coombe Park, there's some antisocial behaviour activity that is on the increase, in particular with drug taking. So if we can get our team to work with, I think, ODBLs, the chair of ODBLs, and see if we can help them to deal with the problem.
I leave that to Mr. Gill to implement.
Thank you, Chair.
Can I suggest anything like that? They need to record it or report it. There is a system on the council website that you can do that. The more you report it, the more evidence we've got to be able to find out, put things, systems in place. So we've got money available. Once we've got the evidence, we need to do something. We can then channel those resources into that area. So get them to report it. That would be great stuff. Deal with it. I'm sure there will. What you just said anyway.
Okay.
Okay. No more questions on that?
No.
And the final section in my area, like I said, the final section in my area is leisure services. As members will be aware that during the course of the pandemic, there was a serious impact on the leisure centres because of the fact that they were closed under various restrictions and at various times. The view is that the leisure centres are recovering, whilst not necessarily back to the pre-COVID levels. You will see from the figures in front of you that there is a steady increase in membership and attendances. Certainly the community and wellbeing team are working closely with SLM, the leisure provider, to do what we can to ensure that things improve. There is always the issue in the third quarter of what's called the winter impact. Starts getting dark, starts getting wet, people can't be bothered, cancel the memberships, don't turn up at the gym. So that's anticipated, and that's part of SLM's business plan. They fully appreciate that's going to happen. Hopefully, and now the weather is improving, and certainly the past few days has been rather nice. People will go back to the gym and start partaking in activities and partaking of membership. Happy to take what questions they can on that, Chair.
Okay, can we just ask next time, can we have some pre-COVID details as well? So compare with like with like. Is that what Lynn, sorry, Mrs. Paul, is that what you were going to say?
Actually, what I was going to ask, could we have figures for pre-COVID so that we can compare like for like?
Yeah, that's not a problem. I mean, obviously those figures will be in previous service delivery reports, so we can identify them fairly quickly. and give you a comparison chart to show exactly where we are.
Morris?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. Page 25, we've got the description and then we've got October, November, December. And then when we look at those spaces, we've got the totals. What is that totals referring to? Because it isn't the figures that are to the left of it, because then none of them add up. So I'm just wondering where those totals would come from. The figures that are in blue are well below the figures that are under total on every single line. So
I think that
totals come from.
they're the split. So if you look at membership, Parklands Fitness is 3239, Wixford Fitness is 1591, and that should marry with the 4830 figure further up. Just a quick look at that, because basically
I'm looking at, for example, swimming, 22,810, 21,396 and 15,566. They have that total at 69,565. It actually totals at 59,772. And you can go through every single line and not one of them marries up. So is that total, where's that total column actually from? Because it doesn't marry up to the first column. So does it marry up somewhere else? And is it based on the paperwork? Or is it somebody's calculator doesn't quite work? Because I can do these figures in my head and I can see that every single one of these is wrong.
But
We've got to look at events 48, 16.
we can certainly check them for you, Councillor Morris, but these are the figures that are supplied by SLM. So
we can all look better than they are.
Well,
Working
so-
Excel spreadsheets.
but there is, in between the figures that you've got, there are various other columns. And I think that this is a cut and paste job from the information supplied by SLM on a monthly basis. And yes, it looks like there is an issue with it.
The other question I have, a lot of the complaints I'm getting about the legislature is obviously parking. And could we not incorporate into membership some scheme, especially with the swimming? You know, I to declare sort of an interest, my children go swimming at Wixted. I have to pay every time to park. But if it was incorporated into this, the cost of the swimming lessons, and you could have some sort of pass then paying extra amount, it would make it a hell of a lot simpler, especially when your lesson starts at 6, you don't get home from work until 20 to 6, you've got to jump in the car, get the kids changed, run there, and then you've got to mess around with the machine and everything. So if you could look at that, that might be assistive to more than one person, I can assure you.
The issue is that the whole purpose or the whole rationale of the permit scheme is to make the permit scheme as cheap as possible. So a resident that has a parking permit for Parklands pays 50 pence per week and can park as many times as possible.
I'm just saying, if you could incorporate if you want a block of 2 hours and it's £1, right, then there must be something that can be worked into the membership there, especially if you've got swimming lessons and everything.
The difficulty with that is the administrative cost of doing it, because though
could it be looked at?
We can certainly consider it as part of it. Well, yeah, we can certainly consider it as yeah.
And if it works out that doing the paperwork's too expensive, and that we've got to have queues of people before they can use the gym, before they can take the kids swimming, paying for parking, then that's so be it. But can we at least have something that explains this? Because I get complaints because I take my children swimming and people moan, and I'm going, well, yeah, it would make sense to me if you just paid, you know, once a week you take your kids swimming, so that's £1 once a week extra on what you pay over the month. I'm not asking for any discount, and you know, not asking for any residential preference. I'm asking for a flat, you know, this is what it is, because it would make life a hell of a lot easier if you could give your registration number and get in with your kids, get them changed, get them with their hat on, get them to their place, especially when the lessons are running half-hour blocks, and it makes it difficult for somebody who works full-time to do it. And I'm talking from myself and for a number of other parents that use it for swimming. So if we could look at something like that, it would ease. No discount, not asking for discount, not asking for parking permits, because a lot of kids come from different areas that wouldn't even qualify for it. Because there's only Enderby, there's only Wigston, there's only Parklands that really offer proper lessons, apart from if you pay private to different areas.
Tracy, you want to come in on that because you?
Yeah, sorry, had just indicated. I think, Dave's absolutely right in terms of trying to get some of that feedback in terms of looking at that and bringing it back. I know that there is a commitment that there will be a review, but I think officers are working on when is a suitable timetable for that. The feedback is really important. There are lots of different elements of feedback that I think need to be considered. And there needs to be, a good data set to be able to undertake that review. It's very early on in the scheme. There were delays I understand, to the launch of the scheme. And I'm sure Dave can add more in terms of the timetable that's being looked at and that future review. But, I think that feedback is invaluable, as is others that members have expressed.
Could you look at how whether Enderby's subscriptions have gone up and Wigston's have gone down? Because parking to get your kids in and out, if I can take my kids to Enderby, get past the old Foxwood roundabout quicker and parked up, I'm going to move my kids.
Okay.
So the reality is the prices at Parklands have gone up and the prices at Wigston have gone up. And Ms. Bingham is quite right. What we have committed to do is to do a review, but in order to do the review, we need to have the data to understand what the impact is. I am well aware that there was an initial suggestion that because of the charges at Brox Hill, Parklands, there would be a loss of membership. There is a loss of membership always, which is the winter effect, which I've just spoken about. So what I'm interested in is if the winter effect normally is 5%, and then this year it was 6.5%, what's the impact before we can commit? The issue, as I said, the real issue is the administrative cost of you paying Parklands in your fee and how that money then comes across to us and how it's reconciled. And that's why we did the permit scheme, because the permit scheme is quite simple. You pay your money, you get your permit and you can park. But we will take on board what you said and we'll review it.
Okay, that's that one. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question has sort of been touched upon in Mr. Gill's original introduction and Councillor Broadley's follow-up. It's really that first paragraph on page 27, which makes a very important point. The recovery of the centre's membership and its therefore business viability, I'm assuming, and to the recovery of the business as a whole is critical. And then the second statement says the aim is to be at operational usage membership rates as they were in March 2020 by the end of March 22. What it doesn't tell us is how close we are to that. What the two charts show is a very steady increase in membership and usage over the first 3 quarters of this financial year, but it doesn't show us where we've got to get or where they need to get to. There's the aspiration, but not the target. So will that continuous steady increase get them there, or is there a big gap to fill?
We know that they've improved. We know they're not at pre-COVID letters, as Councillor Broadley has requested. The only way that you will see that is if you see the figures for March 2020 in there. And as I say, we've committed to providing them in the next report.
Okay. Mrs. Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the car parking permit, I'm not sure whether I understand. I'm going to be just a bit controversial here. £25 for our leisure centres, £25 a year. That's pretty good. That's less than 50p a week. I don't understand how would that make a difference if Parklands or the Wigston pool were charging extra money for swimming lessons. Why are we not promoting the permit itself? If there is a way of selling that permit via Parklands or Wigston pool, okay, I can understand that, but I don't understand how it would help us to for Auckland's or for SLM to put their prices up. I can understand Councillor Morris's frustrations, but wouldn't buying a permit be easier than having to pay increased prices for your swimming lessons?
Right, okay.
Very brief comment on that. The point that you're making, Councillor Hack, is it's two sides of the same coin. The issue is people object to paying for parking, so that they make a comment or fuss about it. They don't use it, the parking, whatever. If you put the prices up to account for the car parking, people would complain about the price increase. And so it's, you know, between a rock and a hard place, the reality is.
Okay.
Councillor.
Mr. Allen.
Sorry, I'm going to throw my 50p piece in as well.
It's actually a pound.
The pound, actually. Yeah.
I think this, with regards to car parking, it's more of an issue of convenience. And there's also people who live outside the borough who are coming in to pay and trying to incorporate that within the cost, making it convenient for them, but also the people that are paying for their permits. I think that's going really well. And I'd like to know some figures on that, because when I'm sure within the borough, we've pretty much got a lot of people that have bought the permit. It's people outside the borough who are coming in, convenience for them, and whether or not that can be incorporated in the price. And that's maybe something that I think Councillor Morris is asking just to look at, just to consider, not necessarily to do, but just to consider.
Just for information, Councillor, the figures for the number of permits that have been sold, cumulatively, the number of transactions per week in terms of pay and display, and the number of transactions for pay by phone are published in the members' bulletin every week. So the information is already available.
Thank you. No more questions on that. We'll move on to agenda item 8. Mrs. Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. At the Service Delivery Committee in November, members requested a full report be given in relation to lunchtime opening hours, which started at the beginning of the pandemic on the 23rd of March in 2020. So contained within this report is some background information and benchmarking analysis across the county of what other councils and districts provide. And then one of the other elements that was also requested was that rather than anecdotal, what we actually got was some fact-based information. So the customer services team and our customer service improvement team actually did some surveys, and the results are contained within the report. Now, Chair, I'm happy to go through this in greater detail or take questions on the specific areas, whichever you prefer.
I won't steal Mrs. Broadley's thunder this time. I understand she wants to talk on this matter. So, Mrs. Broad, you want to go first?
I do, and some of this might be out of date because Mr. Bolter decided to tell me as I sat down this evening that some of this might have changed, but I'm going to say it anyway so that it is recorded. The temporary contracts, there were 2 of them I'm looking at, and I'm presuming they were standard contracts, or were they agency staff? If that can be answered first.
Councillor Broadley, they are direct temporary contracts with the council. They are not through an agency.
Right, thank you. So I'm presuming then that there were standard contracts, and usually a standard contract when issued says so many hours per week, not specific hours. It's been a long time since I've ever seen a contract with 9 till 5 or whatever. They usually say 35, 37, 39 hours a week. And following on from that, if we're already paying for 2 temporary posts, which are going to end, why is the cost of £26,000 to replace those two people? And I'm going to carry on and then let me come on to me at the end. If the two temporary posts are to be made permanent, we're already paying these people, so therefore there wouldn't be the cost of the 26,000. If we're talking about two new posts, we're talking about two new posts to cover 1 hour at lunchtime. And there are a lot of women that I certainly know who would like a contract for 5 to 10 hours a week. So why are we looking at full time? Also, you know, the 5 to 10 hours a week would more than cover the lunchtime openings. We've stopped the public from coming into, this is in general about customer services. We've stopped the public coming into Bushlow House a number of years ago, and we wanted to be more public facing, so we opened at considerable cost Bell Street. Then we decided that we wouldn't have Bell Street. Then there was a reduction in the telephone hours because of COVID initially, but it seems to have remained that we don't open at lunch times, although it's down here to start opening again in April. But then we look at the charts that you've done. There's no pre-booked face-to-face appointments, only appointments on request. You seem to be shutting the public out while spending more on public services. And I think that we need to have a thorough look at the service, certainly with the public very much in mind. Because one of the complaints on social media and to councillors is the lack of information and transparency when things change. Nobody seems to know. It was only knowing that we were closed at lunchtime by ringing at lunchtime. Nobody was informed of it. And I think that we urgently need to improve our transparency and our information out to the members of the public who are very concerned. You know, we take car parking, we take green waste collection, and people are saying, well, we didn't know anything about this. And I think our customer service at the moment seems to leave a lot to be desired from members of the public's point of view. And so I would like, certainly for the service to be looked at, but also if you can answer the questions on this £26,000 would be appreciated. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Brody, I think I've written them all down, so please, if I don't answer your questions then, and I haven't fulfilled it by the time I get to the end, please ask again. Contracted hours. The contracted hours are put in there because it's specifically to cover, it's not 37.5 hours, it is specifically from 8:45 to the actual opening hours for the customer service centre. So they are specifically put in a contract. With regard to your point about 26k, in reality, could I have articulated that slightly better? Yes, I could. You are right in the fact that you say that those temporary contracts are being converted to permanent and therefore they will be contained within existing budgets. A detailed analysis was carried out, and whilst I appreciate and understand your comments about people wanting potentially just 1 to 2 hours or 10 hours a week, in reality to support our service, because of that detailed analysis and because of previous operational capacity analysis as well, it is deemed that there should be 2 full-time posts. Moving on to your point about obviously closing Bell Street when we were through the pandemic. One of the things I have been tasked with, and is a KPI, and actually am looking at, is the service overall, what we deliver, how we deliver it. And therefore, one of the comments I have made, I believe, in the report is that in November, what I want to do is actually bring to the council a future overview of what the customer service provision may be. And for me, that is me looking at other service areas as well, not just the customer service centre. So, for example, revenues and benefits, how they interact and how they dovetail into the customer service centre. How could we utilise potentially other resources within the council to deliver a better service, to reach disenfranchised people, to reach people who are, for example, need extra resource help, looking at the demographics. So there is a big project going on around that, which will then deliver a customer experience strategy and will look at the full provision from a customer service perspective. There will be, I would imagine, some short, quick wins that we can do, but before delivery of that report in November, which we can publicise and should have a positive effect out with members of the public. And I think for me, it's not just residents either, it's businesses, so it's a whole. I hope I've answered all your questions.
Yeah, and I am absolutely delighted to hear that you are going to complete this piece of work, because I think COVID hasn't helped, but I think the negativity that is out there about this council, not only about councillors, but about the council, has been very detrimental to the borough. And so the fact that we're going to look at it and see how we can improve and do things better, I am delighted. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Mr. Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. I would echo Councillor Broadley's concerns, and I would also echo Councillor Broadley's delight in this being looked at. It is a problem for us. It's a problem for everybody in the council. We need customer services to be resident orientated, because it's the residents out there that pay for all this. So we need a good service. I will look forward to the report coming to us so that we can look at it. The only question I've got is in relation to the customer survey on satisfaction. On page 41, there's a little chart that says in January and February, we had 54 and 59 responses, which is a satisfaction rate of 93.5 and 96.2%. But compared to the amount of calls that actually came into the council over a year, I take it, of 61,576, that's a very small percentage of people. Is it right to base a satisfaction percentage on such a small number compared to the actual number of calls coming in? I personally myself wouldn't think it is, especially when you look at the percentage of calls answered, which is only 83%. So there's 17% of calls that weren't answered. Is there a reason why they weren't answered? Or did they just run out of time and put the phone down? It's just my experience that, from my personal point of view as a councillor who does go out into the community and frequents various establishments around the borough, I get a lot of abuse thrown at me because of the reaction they get from the council. So there are an awful lot of unsatisfied people out there that don't necessarily fill in the customer satisfaction surveys. So I just question whether we're doing it right to actually get a correct percentage. I mean, if you look at my visits, 63%, Hinkley and Bosworth 98%, North West Leicester 85%, there's 96%. I just can't believe, from what I actually physically experienced, it's not correct. I mean, I will tell you, the other night I was threatened seriously with regard to this council, and I have to leave the establishment. So there are people out there that are not satisfied. I just question these figures a little bit, but I look forward to a report coming through to all feel a little bit better and improve the service. But can I just clarify what you said about the amount of money that was put in the report about to employees? Are you saying that's within the current budget? So that actually is not additional money? So there won't be any additional money being spent out of budget?
Fisher?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, to your final point, moving back to your other points, with regard to 4.3, the survey, that was done in quite quick turnaround because of the request in November Service Delivery Committee. It was deemed, and I think I mentioned that December was an incredibly short month because of Christmas, and therefore we probably wouldn't get a good response rate. Is it a small sample size from my experience and the knowledge I have of customer satisfaction, and that's my background? Yes, it is a small sample size. So from a point of view of that element, it is a small sample size, but nonetheless, we've done the exercise. So from my perspective, it is small, but it's given us some data. To your point of which I think referred to Appendix 1, I think from my perspective that was a very good exercise that we did around benchmarking and getting some information across from all the other councils and districts. Calls are answered 83%. In the actual Service Delivery Committee report, what I produce now is a really much more detailed analysis, which shows you why calls are abandoned, and that's why that rate is low. I think what's really important to note is, you know, the number of calls to Blakeney was 61,000, ours was 60,947, ours was 61,576. You know, our customer satisfaction rating is 96, and actually, whilst the percentage of calls is 83%, the customer satisfaction rating is high, and I think that's really important to note. Apologies, just going back to the point of those surveys in a small sample size, they were taken when people phoned up, and it was an option that they could take that survey, so it wasn't compulsory. So that also it gives an element of the sample size being quite small. We have, as members will probably be aware, we've got a customer service improvement manager now, specifically focusing on the whole of our customer service, and also very heavily focusing on customer satisfaction, both internally and externally. So you will start to see some more statistical data coming out on that, and transparency, to Councillor Broadley's point, on the website about those information, comments, complaints, and percentages, so to give some profile about how we're doing as a council. I hope that answers your questions.
Well, Mr. Bentley, then we'll move on.
Just one quick one. If we are having a total review of the service that the council provides, part of our job is to provide value for money.
Yeah.
So are we looking also at alternatives to the service? I know it's controversial, but we need to do so.
One of the elements of the customer experience strategy and our interaction and engagements with residents will definitely be looking at the technology that we have and how we engage with them. And is that potentially, it's all about channel shift and transformation. So could that potentially be some cost savings? Yes, maybe. But that element certainly forms a part of it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Boyce?
Thank you, Chair. Picking up on the last point of that, the customer service centre was set up, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, in a time, A, we could afford it, and secondly, because we as council are actually dedicated to provide as good a quality of customer service as possible. But it was also set up to achieve system shift. Now, I've actually been on the phone for an hour today, failing to get through to a call centre to make what is a relatively simple change. And actually, every phone call to this council is potentially a failure of the system shift. If we can change as many people to doing what they can do online themselves, that actually has a tremendous impact on how much it costs and on the time our customer services then could spend with people who can't do things online. So really, yes, we've got to concentrate on making sure the telephone is available, but we've got to do far more work on making sure the systems behind the telephone are fit for purpose, and people not only can do more on them for themselves, but actually it's easier to do more for themselves. And I think we made significant progress, but we need to do more. So I think we need to bear in mind that we do need to do lots more channel shifts, and that will make the service easier to access and more cost effective for people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Any other comments at all? Mr. Lloyd-Law?
I'm just taking on board what the Boyce has said. They're shifting down the digital route. We'll all robots before and pressing buttons. I accept you've got to move down the digital line. Let's not forget the reputation of this council is paramount for me. And if people going down the line like big businesses saying, if you want to press this button, one line, do this, do that, do the other, and never talk to a human being, the reputation of this council is finished. We've got a lot of work to do from a point of view of the reputation that it's been justified. Our own making, I'll talk about not do that. I think we've got to think more positive now, and how we're going to get the message across to people what we're doing and the good things that we're doing. Not saying, well, the good thing is that you go online and you do this and press that one and press that one, because they'll just turn away from you and switch off. We've got to be a bit more positive on what the good things that we're doing within the borough. The officers are working exceptionally hard. I get frustrated when I say, can I do this? Can you do that? Yeah, go online and do this, do that, do the other. And go online and do this, that, the other. You spend hours on it because you're having to say, well, now you've gone down that line, press that one because you've got to go in that direction. People get frustrated and they don't do it. There's over 3,000 people who've got the systems. I showed it here sometimes. Not there, they're not on that system. They're not. But we've got a corporate team now. It's a new year, it's a new opportunity, as I said before. We need to work together and say, how are we going to get that message out there to those people? In the past, we've spoiled them, haven't we? Because they left the box and everything else, and we've been able to pass that good messaging on. That's not there anymore. I was at the polling station that day. People saying, I don't know this, I don't know that. Some of it was pretty good, and that be said. I found myself saying, what line are you finding it's on there? I'm spending my time on that. So, from a point of view, it needs a little bit more positivity. And you tell us how we can get that message over there for people who can't access. I want to see some sort of letterbox type thing going out again, because that is a tool that gives this council a good reputation, and it keeps people informed rather than keep, that's what John's saying, keep training them to go online, keep training them to go online. Come on, let's be realistic. Let's get some sort of common sense back into it and give people what they want to do. Because we've got a great council here and we need to flog it that. It's a great place to be, a great place to live, and that's the strap line I used years ago, and it's being used all the time. So please, let's be a bit more proactive and get that message out to our customers.
Mrs. Fisher, you got the message?
So that we belong.
I certainly have, Chair. One of the recommendations actually on here, and Councillor Lloyd was talking about, you know, how can we get the message out there and help, is I think since the inception of Bell Street, when that was established, the role of the technical officer has changed considerably. And one of the things I was suggesting was, is there an element of the members actually know exactly everything as a service offering that we do, and would it help us to run awareness sessions? And I'd be more than happy to set those up. So look, that's just a recommendation. If members are actually interested in that, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Okay, Mrs. Broadley, then we're going to wind it up.
Right, just quickly, following on from what Councillor Lloyd has said, I think the letterbox is a brilliant idea. I've had Leicestershire Matters through my door today. In the county council, I knew most of it anyway, but a lot of people wouldn't, and it gets it through the letterbox. And I'm not suggesting we go back to 4 or 5 times a year, twice a year, but with relevant information. Somebody else had asked, I think it was Councillor Kaufman, for a leaflet or something to go out with the council tax bill. I know there was a problem with the timing and everything, but your suggestion of what you actually do to councillors needs to go out to residents, because if you talk to residents, we empty their bins and we now charge for car parking. That is all they talk about, because they don't know, you know, maybe they might know about the cemetery, but that's it. And I think people need to know that, yes, they're paying their council tax, but they're paying for this, and this, not just extra for the car parking and to get my bin emptied. So I think it's really important that message gets out, not just to us councillors, but to every member in this borough.
Right, Mr Fisher, then we'll wind it up.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Frawley, that is what is going to form part of that review, about channels out, how we engage with people and all those elements around that, and technology and the services that we offer. So it's a really robust review, and then we make decisions based on that. So to your point, we'll take that into account.
Right, there's two recommendations. All in favour of the two recommendations, please indicate. You're still awake. Good. Okay then. Thank you. Thank you for the meeting. Just to say that that's the end of the meeting. I'd like to thank you all for the support in the last 12 months for this committee. It's been a difficult year with COVID. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm working with Mrs Fisher on a revised method of agendas for the next meeting. So it makes things a little bit easier and simpler, and hopefully a little quicker. All right.